Welcome to Sit and Stay, the podcast that breaks down the challenges of starting and maintaining a mental health practice into digestible chapters. Sit and Stay is presented by RipsyTech, an electronic health record company committed to addressing the mental health crisis in the United States.
Hello, and welcome back to the Sit and Stay podcast brought to you by RipsyTech. I am RipsyTech product manager Parker Anderson. As always, I'm joined by founder and CEO of RipsyTech, Tom Tarshis. Hey, Tom.
Hey, Parker. Nice to see you.
Always good to see you, Tom. And today we are joined by a very special guest. We have Ida Milani with us. Hey, Ida.
Hello.
Hello. So a little background on Ida as our special guest today. She's a licensed marriage and family therapist. She's based in Mountain View, California, and she recently transitioned to full-time private practice after years of working in group and community-based settings. She specializes in supporting adolescents and young adults through major life changes. She uses a warm, collaborative, and direct approach, and she draws from a very relational and solution-focused lens, helping her clients manage anxiety, overcome imposter syndrome, and just in general build a deeper sense of confidence and self-trust. She roots her work in, from what I've heard, she roots her work in authenticity, resilience, and a deep respect for each person's lived experience. And with her recent experience making the leap from a group practice to full-time private practice, we thought it would be the perfect time to have her on the show to kind of talk about navigating that transition. So we're happy to have her.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course.
Yeah, no, and Ida, it's really you're our first guest who's more recently licensed and has decided to make that jump into private practice and everything that entails. So really excited to hear about your experience and plans. And for these episodes, we usually do start with that. Hey, when was it that you decided to be a mental health clinician? Was it when you were 2 years old and your baby brother was born that cried a lot and you're like, I want to help him? What's your story?
Yeah, I love that question, actually. So I think I knew for sure I wanted to be a therapist at like 12 or 13. And I think I was kind of always like what I'd call like a therapist friend in most of my like circles, even at a young age. If people were like fighting or whatever, I was kind of listening, trying to problem solve. And then I remember at the elementary school that I went to, we had this program called like conflict management. And so we had conflict managers on the playground during lunch and recess. And so once you were in, I think maybe 5th or 6th grade, you could sign up to be one. And I was like, yep, because I was super curious and also super nosy. And I was like, what's happening on this playground, right? So when I started to do that, and they had like clipboards, to go through these questions, or like sit with people and do it. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I love doing this. It was so interesting. I was curious about like everyone's perspective. Where does this come from? So that's like really where it started. And then I think probably it aligned pretty well because coming into like 12, 13, 14, going to middle school, things are pretty rough, I think, for me in terms of my own mental health and also just like trying to fit in and making friends. And both my parents are immigrants from Iran, and the area I was in at the time was not super diverse. And so I had this feeling of kind of, I want to fit in. I feel like we have the same kind of story and situation. But then as I got a little bit older, I realized like there's certainly different things that I was experiencing that some of my friends and people in my classes were not. And so this experience of being like kind of isolated, but really wanting to like assimilate and fit into these groups. And so like I kind of struggled a bit with my own mental health all the way through the end of high school, which is like when I went to Foothill and was like, I'm definitely going to study psych, and just kind of went from there. So I think it started kind of on that playground, and then over time just kind of built and just felt like that was the right place for me to go. And then I knew at that age too that my mom, when she was younger, also wanted to be a therapist. And at that time, Santa Clara was also pretty well known for their program. So that's really the only program I'd heard about and wanted to get into. And so from that age on, I was like working to get into Santa Clara, which is where I ended up going. And it was
awesome.
Nice. And
very cool. Oh my gosh, I love that story. And my research focus decades ago is actually bullying and victimization in schools. And yeah, the prevalence of bullying, especially at recess with the lack of grown-up supervisors, like I love that innovation of let's get these peer conflict resolution, like that idea is awesome. And I wish it was happening more in schools. And I also appreciate you sharing that personal information. And I think a lot of us in this field, well, it's sort of a lot of people in the world, but in true also, but yeah, people who've dealt with mental health struggles themselves, and are drawn to psychology, and then actually follow through that whole path to, yeah, then get into the good graduate school you wanted to, and do all the steps needed. So yeah, awesome story, and congratulations for like doing so well to get through that path.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's been a ride, but it's very full circle now. It feels like a really exciting piece of my life. Probably a lot of my life and too much of my life at this point, but it's, I love it.
Yeah.
And Ida, you mentioned Foothill, which is the community college in the Bay Area, which is I believe we actually probably took the same psychology courses. I was also at Foothill, which is where the last time we saw each other. So yeah, it's cool to talk to somebody else who's like, oh my gosh, same foundation as me. Maybe ended up in different places, but both psychology related. Now we're on this podcast talking, but yeah, great stuff.
Yeah, Foothill was a good one. I originally wanted to go to a 4-year, but like with what I struggled with in high school, I just like couldn't make that happen. So I remember originally being like, dang, I'm going to Foothill. But then as I actually went there, it was where my academic success started, where I really felt like I got the help and support I needed, and like could produce the grades that I felt like I always had internally, but just was struggling to like get out there. So Foothill's a really positive part of my story too.
Awesome. Yeah. And and I see, like, we like to ask what people, not necessarily specialized, but it did sound like you did a lot of your hours and coursework at youth-centered agencies. And I feel like I know the answer to this, but who do you see, if there was an age group or that you liked most, what is your target population? And
so that's actually kind of evolved a little bit over time. And I had a feeling this would happen, but I was trying so hard to resist it. But originally, I really wanted to work with like 13 to 18. So like right in that like teenage years, which I did. I did a lot of my practicum and practice with clients that were in that range, which I really enjoyed. And the major reason being like the classic, wanted to be the person I needed when I was younger kind of thing. And it was really enjoyable. I liked that. The challenge falls, I think, working with the parents of those clients. That's really where it's difficult. And so as I've kind of grown in my practice, it's shifted a little bit more to like maybe 16, 17 on the low end, and then closer to like 30, maybe 35 on the high end. So kind of like that adolescent young adult, and then just like transitioning into adulthood is really where I have like the prime of the clients that I like to work with.
Very good. Yeah. Well, and you highlighted a principle in our field, which is, for kids, and you nailed like the age range, just sort of 15 and younger, when there's a very few kids where you're just doing therapy with them to make things better. You've got to do that parent work. And often, I think for a lot of mental health professionals, working with parents can be very challenging and difficult. And it's something, in our larger group practices, when we're able to have someone next door who can do parent work and you can work with the kid, that's the gold standard to get those good results. And it's harder to pull that off in a private practice because after about age 8, you can't be the individual therapist for the kid and do the therapy for the parents, because it ruins the trust and alliance and these other factors. And I don't know if that, like, if you, and maybe this is in your future too, but would there be, if there was an opportunity to have colleagues or peers or people right with you who could do the parent work and vice versa, would that be a different choice for you?
Yeah, definitely. Because I think like something I've known about myself that I hope as I get a little bit older, like get more experience, this will shift for me, or maybe it won't. Maybe it's just part of my story. But I think a bias I know about myself is I tend to believe the kid more than I believe the parent. And that's helpful when you're working with the kid, but it's not helpful when you're working with the parent. And I think like knowing that limitation is what shifted me a little bit away from that, because though of course you're not really trying to pick sides, I just, in my experience, it's been really hard because a lot of times it feels like parent drops off kid and it's like fix them, but then
Ugh.
my job is like, but mirror, right? Like, but so what's happening that's causing a piece of this? So yeah, like my ideal would be to work with the teen and someone else work with the parents, someone who can more efficiently and with less bias align and understand their perspective. And I'm not a parent yet, so my hope is that maybe when I am, maybe that'll shift for me and I'll be able to hold that space in a more effective way. But I think because of my own personal experience, then also just like what I've seen in my practice, it's hard for me to hold both truths at the same time. And that's just like my human error in the midst of all of that.
And yeah, no, and that's awesome to see that, recognize where you're at in your life and your training and your experience. And yeah, echoing that, when I was, starting out at Stanford, I couldn't stand that drop my kid off and fix them. And so it really pushed me into the parent work. And now, well, I have 5 kids. I've been doing this a long time. So I'm sort of like, give me the most difficult, challenging parent cases you've got and parents you've got. And I like it. It's very easy for me to call parents out. You're right to believe the kid most of the time. And right, we always take the kid's side, even if maybe sometimes parents are right, because that's how you get better results. But yeah, we'll see in 10 or 15 or 20 years, you'll probably be like, get in here and sit down, you guys, stop screwing up your kid. No, but anyway.
I imagine it'll shift. And it's interesting because in the same way that you ask for cases where I could give you the most kind of difficult parent case, that's how I am with the teens. I'm like, I take on a lot of teens like they're not willing to be in therapy. They don't want to be there. They'll tell you, I don't want to be here. I'm not interested in doing this. There's no way you're going to help me. Those kids are my favorite kids. And we generally end up having an amazing relationship with each other. It's like my ability to withstand that, like, I don't like you and I don't want to be in this space. There's something about that I feel like I really understand. And I'm like, okay, let's just sit then let's just chill. And I think it also benefits me to like look young and also dress a little bit more casual. Just makes it, I think, a little bit easier for some of those folks to trust me and be like, maybe she understands where I'm coming from, but it just takes a lot of time, which I'm down for it. I like that process.
Awesome.
Yeah, everything you're saying is really resonating with experience that I had when I used to work in intensive outpatient programs with teens, when it's like, I'm like, well, I mean, I'm like 30 now, but 31. But when I was, was 23, 24 working in these groups, and it's like, sometimes teens just need somebody who's willing to listen to them or understand them, like get at their level, like really have a conversation, treat them like a person. You tell people like, oh yeah, I used to work in intensive outpatient programs with teens who were like, had really acute mental health symptoms, and people are like, whoa, what was that like? And I'm like, I was hanging out with teenagers every day.
Yeah.
So
it's definitely not boring. That's for sure. Which I like. Yeah. It's interesting. Yeah.
Right.
Very cool. Well, and Ida, so yeah, you've started a private practice, pretty fresh out of being fully licensed.
Yeah.
Tell us, why did you decide to go this path? What are some of the barriers you faced, and how have you been successful at getting your practice started so far?
Yeah. Okay. I always have wanted to do private practice because I think like coming from the community that I come in and some of the pressures sometimes I feel to be successful and financially stable, etc. I've always kind of been on this mission of like, just because I'm a therapist doesn't mean that I can't like make good money and do good things, which I think like in my experience in grad school, there wasn't much talk about private practice. It felt a little bit like, kind of selling out in a way. And so there's kind of this, maybe stigma with it. But my thought was like, I can also help people and also make good money. And so I was always kind of like focused on that. And I also wanted to niche and have control over the clients that I take, and be able to be like, no, that's not a good fit. Yes, that's a good fit. So I've always wanted to, and I was just kind of waiting to be licensed to be able to do it. And then the process, actually, I got really lucky. So my older brother, I have two older brothers, this one's in the middle. He started a company called Herd in 2019 that works with therapists and helps them with like the financial side of the business. And so when he started that, he like got really into mental health, and piece of that was because me and him were so close. He saw me struggle, and so he wanted to be in that world and help. So by the time I wanted to start a private practice, he's actually like been in the therapy world quite a bit. So he helped me with the whole process of like, how do you start the business? What are the forms that you do? How much does it cost? So he helped me a lot with that, which I'm super grateful for, because they also don't teach us that in grad school. So I was just kind of, ChatGPT, what am I supposed to do to start this thing? I don't know. And so that was kind of how I did the process. And then it's been an interesting ride. On one hand, like, it's really exciting to know that, cool, you can like maybe make more money, you can get the clients that you want. So that's been exciting, making a website, kind of putting myself out there to some extent. The hard part is just like figuring out marketing. I mean, how do you do it, and what are the best ways to get clients? And now with the world of like social media, do you need to be on social media to get clients? Or there's a lot of feelings about that, or like, how much AI can you use before people are like, ooh, that doesn't feel right? And so the challenge has been figuring out how you do any of that, because I just didn't learn too much about that in school. So it's just been a lot of research. It's like been a little costly. It's not horrible. But yeah, there's costs to kind of think about. So that's also a challenge when you're just trying to build it. But more than anything, I think it's figuring out, how do you get your name out there, and how do you get the clients that you want to get? It's just a lot of trial and error is what I feel like has been my experience so far.
Gotcha. Well, and so that's awesome to have like an older brother. And there are that we hear that often with people have a sibling or an uncle who started a business and can help with some of those pieces. It's very interesting, because I didn't know about that culture at Santa Clara University, and I wonder, it's the same thing sort of with all of medicine, that there's not enough talk about finances and business and things like that. And I do know that a lot of the places that Parker read off that you were at are sort of nonprofits, therapists work for very low salaries. We're in the Bay Area, I was feeling that, with the Gen Z group, or that there's been a little more recognition about, hey, you can be a good therapist. It is the way to make a decent salary wherever you live is to do private practice part or full time. And so that was interesting to hear some of that. It wasn't spoken about that much at your training program, and probably certainly not at some of the nonprofits that you got some of your hours at. And we're hoping for this shift and change, that you don't have to commit yourself to a lifetime of poverty just to help people with mental health issues.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I think, stigma still out there around therapists that are doing private practice and what they're charging. And I felt it at Santa Clara. I felt it at a lot of nonprofits, where it's kind of like, oh, you're kind of selling your soul for this thing. And I'm like, well, I mean, in some ways, right, I feel like a reframe is that, like, I value the work that I do. And also, it's not like I'm hard lined on charging someone a lot of money for a session. Like, I have sliding scale, and there's people I do for free. And so, like, having a little bit of a range in there makes me feel a little bit more comfortable with it. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of unfortunate, because therapists take on quite a bit, and we do it by choice. So, there's no complaints on that. But I mean, having an income that can support your life is important in order for us to be able to do that work effectively. And in the moments where you're not getting paid well, and you have a lot of clients on your caseload, I mean, you burn out and you also just don't show up how you actually want to. And so those are the things I kind of battle inside my head when I think about doing mostly all private practice. And it also does help to have family members that are there that are like, have done businesses, and like, you have to think through the lens of a business versus the lens of purely just a clinician, and do a little bit of both, or else you're going to maybe sell yourself a little short, because you're trying to be people pleasing or kind or self-sacrificing, but eventually we run out of anything to give. And that's what I'm trying heavily to avoid, because I'd like to do this for the majority of my life.
Very, very well stated. And it's also, it's misguided for people to judge others, or for any of that guilt, because it's the broken system where insurance companies should be paying people properly, and then it wouldn't be an issue. And that's been sort of my mission the last 2 decades. And as you get more established, and if you want to explore, there is paths to sometimes get insurance companies to actually pay the rates that you have listed on your website. It's one of these things where I don't really recommend you try to fight the insurance companies right when you're starting. Like, get established. And Ida, there's a lot of stuff on the marketing piece you mentioned also. I think if I can see like your charisma and skill, so eventually, like, word of mouth, you'll get your practice filled. Like, if it's urgent to get it filled quickly, like, there are paths there. And as Parker will talk about it, I do think the world has changed. Your comment on social media, where it is okay for therapists, for mental health clinicians, to be on social media, to engage. And
that has changed the game, I think, in a lot of ways.
And Parker, I know you maybe have some. We were at a recent conference actually for RipsyTech, but a lot of people were coming by around, a podcast, or how do we do something on social media or TikTok, and they didn't know. And Parker and our other business person Ryan do some work to help people on various things such as that. But Parker, I wonder what your thoughts are.
Oh gosh, I have a million thoughts, and my head is just kind of racing with all the different things. I mean, part of the reason why I enjoy doing this podcast with Tom is because, it's us being able to provide that education for people in some way, shape, or form, whether it resonates with them or not. It's at least something, and it's free, and, it doesn't cost anything to give it a listen, or to read a blog post, or, whatever. And it's all out there, and it's, it's fun. We do it sometimes weekly, sometimes every 2 weeks, but I guess in terms of the marketing, like a good website goes a long way. I feel like, we talk about the mental health crisis, and I'm like, well, we need to talk about the mental health provider website crisis, because there's there's some rough ones out there. But it's also pretty interesting because sometimes I'm big into design. I do a lot of design work at RipsyTech, and healthcare is not, like, word of mouth and the quality of the care that you give is going to be like the number one thing above, like, how nice does your website look, or how creative is your logo, or the name of your practice. But, well, I love design, so I'm a little biased. Like, I want to create the like, when people come to me and they say like, oh, here's my website, I have like a million things that I feel like I can suggest to them. And that's part of what I like about my job. When people come to us at RipsyTech, like, we are an EHR company, and most people are like brand new to starting a business, and then they want to sign up, and like, we get to have these like authentic conversations with them about like, oh, here are things that you can do. Here are strategies. Like, here, here's our podcast that you can listen to, but if you have questions, like, we are happy to answer those questions. Or like, oh, did you just update your website? Like, send it to me. I have, I can send you some feedback. And being able to just provide that like straight up like oh, you don't know about revenue cycle management? Well, here's what I found on the market. Here's what we know. And that's, I'm ranting a little bit myself about just enjoying my job, but yeah, I mean, marketing is a huge piece, and I'm just happy that, you know, we get to have some part of helping the providers who are not getting the education in school with that piece.
Yeah, I mean, it's huge. Like, if people, I mean, I've thought about this too, maybe years down the line when I have it figured out, is to like go and offer that to some of these schools. Because we had one workshop on private practice at Santa Clara in the 3 years I was there, and it was so many people. I had to bring in another part too. It was like at least, 70, 80 people, and Santa Clara's cohorts were pretty small. So like the interest is there and people want to. And so if there were people that were providing workshops or help or support or whatever it is, which I'm sure you are, sounds like you are, which like you'll be hearing from me soon. But it would be really helpful, and it would break the stigma a little bit to have people coming in and talking about that. Because I mean, it's huge. It's a big part of how you can get out there. So we should know it to some extent.
Yeah. Not just, it's all sort of levels of clinicians. But Parker, I love your phrase, the mental health provider website crisis. So,
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Very funny.
I can't help but notice it's.
Well, and Ida, as it, like we also like to ask, and it's great to have sort of a newer graduate perspective, but we like to ask people, what's something that you'd like to see done differently in our field, and then what's something that you're excited about in the field of mental health as you're starting out?
Yeah. So my answers are actually both kind of similar. So what I like that's already happening is this idea that, and I think social media honestly is a big piece of it, but this idea that like therapists are not blank slates. We are like multifaceted people, and more power to the therapists that are blank slates. Honestly, I don't know how they do it. That's a skill. But I think with social media, with therapists actually putting their lives out there a little bit more and being more themselves, I think we're moving in the right direction. I think it works for some of the newer generations to have therapists that, can laugh or make a joke or call you out or whatever it is that feels a little bit more real. So I think like that's what I like that's happening already is, okay, now we're seeing a therapist's life where we're hearing about, how much is the therapist making, how much do you end up paying, just like more information. And I think it's just bringing out a little bit more authenticity. And then like to add to that, what I wanted to continue to do is I think there's a style of therapy that's definitely mine. And like, I'm hoping that it starts to build a little bit more is like this idea of like, we're not blank slates. We are who we are, right? And we can have a real relationship that's still valuable and important and therapeutic without one of us being super guarded and the other person you're spilling their guts. And so like my style, I think, is very real. It's really direct. And so that's what was kind of part of your intro to me is like being warm and collaborative, but also being like, hey, you told me you wanted to work on this thing. You're doing the opposite of that thing. Let's bring attention to it in a kind way, but like calling it out. And so this idea of like being authentic, being real, being loud in the therapy room, being like, hey, using humor. Humor is huge for me. I know humor is a defense mechanism. And so, we use it to some extent, but like humor is important. There's moments in the therapy room where you're just kind of like, but did you really feel like?
It is a mature defense mechanism. So it is good.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. And it's like, you're not trying to take away from the seriousness of what's happening in your sessions with the client, but also it softens the touch a little bit. There's moments where your client is telling you something that completely doesn't align with what they want, right? And it's harder to say, you said that you want us to change this thing versus being like, what was that? What are we doing there, right? And so it's like a little bit more human. And that's like always what I've wanted to do. When I was at Santa Clara, I was like, how am I going to do this blank slate thing? I mean, it made me question whether or not I was made for the field because I was like, I can't fit in that box. But then there's this energy of, is that unethical? Is it unethical to be myself? Is it unethical to answer a question about where'd you grow up? I couldn't really fully understand this idea of being so hardlined. So with social media, I think it's breaking pieces of that shows that therapists are just human beings. They do this as their job because they like it. But then my hope is that we move more towards this idea of being it's okay for our therapists to be human in our sessions, and that clients actually tend to like that and want that, and they stay. The retention is there. And I noticed that with realer, more direct and authentic therapists, their clients stay and they certainly come back. But when you are too blank slate, I think it's hard for people, especially I think if you come from a different culture. It doesn't always come off very warm. And that was my experience growing up. Is
Okay.
blank slate feels cold sometimes. And so it doesn't help for me to open up.
Yeah, and yeah, very well said. And for our listeners, when Ida's mentioning blank slate, for hundreds of years in mental health treatment, the pressure was to be a blank slate, and a lot of this is Sigmund, the origins of psychotherapy. And there is there's psychoanalysis and psychodynamic therapies where you tend to maybe disclose a little bit less. That's not great for working with kids and teens. And it's also, I think, as Ida points out, you want to meet people where they're at and do what's effective. And we want to be flexible with the therapies we're drawn to. And I guess I was feeling a little sad in your training that you didn't have some people say, yeah, it's okay to tell someone where you're from, or that, hey, your parents were divorced when you were young. You don't want to make your patients feel bad for you and be the therapist, but some self-disclosure around just being human. And that's always been I've always been first name basis. I've always kind of worn t-shirt and jeans. It really helps with kids and parents. And if I've never had anyone judge me, or why aren't you wearing a suit and tie and being quiet and just going, no, but so it's well said, Ida, and especially for your population. And if that's the therapy you're drawn to, you're going to be a better therapist and clinician and get those results and help people make change. So I love that. And
I appreciate that. It's funny because I've always been a oversized t-shirt and a jean kind of person. So it's what field do I choose that will allow me to dress how I like for the rest of my life? And I got it. I'm so excited about it. But yeah, it helps. And kids will be the first to be you look like a cop, or, you look like you're my probation officer, or, whatever it is. You look too buttoned up and I don't trust you. So it's been helpful. And then I also forgot to add this, because it's kind of another thing I'm excited about, which I also feel interestingly is controversial, but AI in therapy, I think I love it. I'm into it. This is great. I think it helps us do our notes. Great. Perfect. That's helpful. I know, of course, there's this fear, right? Oh, well, will AI take over therapy? Will they become therapists? And I'm well, not really, to be honest. I mean, there's a humanness that exists in the therapy world. I'm also someone to say, when new things come up, I don't think we should just go hard on, I'm afraid, I'm fearful, this thing is going to take away everything that I've worked for, right? Let's be curious and wonder if this will the notes be done quicker and with less stress? Great. Why aren't we using it, kind of idea? So I'm pretty yeah, let's make it easier. Let's make it easier for therapists to just do what they're there to do. And then the other things, if AI is helping you with billing or super bills or whatever it is, I think that's great. And also, AI has a lot of great ideas in terms of interventions with difficult clients, or clients that aren't moving, not difficult clients, but difficult cases, right? Something that's outside of the box. It just feels more information. And I some ways feel that's been really helpful, and I'm curious about it. I think that's a win for us.
yeah, well, yeah, very, very well stated. And, just being at the recent conference in San Francisco, well, I've always been a tech person, and we've got our AI features into our EHR, and more are coming. And I whether or not we can be careful about things, but whether we like it or not, it's coming. And I think there are great utility and application. And I share with you, Ida, that clinicians are not going to be replaced by AI. Like it's not there's been some studies showing that AI could deliver strict CBT better than some clinician. And you know, there's some interesting research out there, but we've actually tried piloting a few AI replacements and it doesn't work. Like people want to know the human. I'll say yet. Who knows what will happen? I think AI buddies or chat, you know, there are things where there is good engagement, but I don't think there's going to be replacements for therapists. I don't see that coming. So let's see what it can help us with, and then let's use that. And I've always been like, you know, notes stink. If we can have something that writes our notes 90% for us, and we only need to spend 1 minute on it, and that gives us 10 extra minutes to be with our patients, that is a huge win. And so do you think in your cohort, is that general feeling, you know, around technology, let's go for it, let's do it? Or do you find others of your peers worried about AI in this field?
You know, it's a really interesting thing. Again, like I'm a pretty straight shooter, so I'm going to keep this very real. But I think more people are okay, more therapists are okay with it than they say. But there's so much judgment, I think, in the therapy world around like, oh, like you're okay with AI, or oh, you think it's okay to post on TikTok, right? Like there is judgment in the field. And so I think people are a little bit more hesitant to say, yeah, actually, I mean, I use AI notes, right? I mean, it was recently, I was talking to a coworker and I was like, yeah, I'm using, you know, this free trial for AI notes. I'm like, oh my God, I'm so glad you said that, because so am I, right? But it's like, well, why are we whispering? So that's a really real thing. So I think if people were truly honest and didn't feel super judged for it, I'd say more people would be open to it. But it generally is a little bit less than maybe 50-50, I think. I'm probably a little bit more outspoken about it because I have a brother that's in tech and like he's all about it. And so I'm like, yeah, I don't see any issue with it. I think maybe as time's going by, maybe people are a little bit more open. I think people that are my age or younger are definitely more open, but I think sometimes the older generation's a little bit more resistant, or it doesn't track with what they learned in school. So they're a little bit more, you know, question mark about it.
Yeah. And I think sorry, Parker, I'll just to share the one funny, a lot of people of all ages were sort of interested in the AI, but sort of a funny interaction at the conference was someone, you know, clearly a supervisor walking with their student finishing up their hours, and sort of the supervisor very anti everything about AI, and then the student kind of taking a card and winking at us, you know, that they'll follow up later, and it speaks to your, so a little funny story. But Parker, yeah, go ahead, sir.
I was just going to say, I mean, AI is just one of those innovations like the internet or the printing press. You know, we're just figuring out how to live with it, and it's going to keep developing. And, you know, some jobs might become obsolete in some but new jobs are going to be created. I think in the case of therapy, and like this comes up a lot in discussions that I have with my friends who are in design. Like, you know, we worry about AI, but at the same time, it's like you really cannot replace that human element, that human ability to think and problem solve and reason in a way that like an AI will only kind of reach in a somewhat like logical conclusion. You know, just you can't replace that human element like at all. I mean, in the case of design, it's like maybe I'll use an AI image to help me get inspired, but it's not going to be the final product, right?
Right.
And maybe an AI chatbot will be kind of like the first line of defense of like, hey, I'm struggling with my mental health, and it'll be like, great, let's get you to a therapist. Right. Or, I mean, that's in the case of it like doing a little bit of your job, but in terms of like the pure convenience of like an AI writing your notes, or small shameless plug, because we just released an episode about our AI tools like an hour and a half before recording this episode. Where, you know, it's like, yeah, an AI tool to help like write your notes, an AI tool that will, you know, read your notes or understand like the case from your notes and help you write like an IEP letter, for example, or a treatment summary or a medication summary. And it's like, these are things that really save time for people. And yeah, it's, it's changing the nature of how you do the work. But at the end of the day, like you're, doing better at your job. Like that whole idea of like AI is not going to replace you, but somebody who does your job who's using AI might replace you,
I like that. That's a good way to put it. It's true though. I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, I'll speak for myself. My like point of pride in terms of what I do in my work is not like how well I write my progress note. It's not like,
Right.
yes, I'm good at treatment plans. Like that's not what I'm excited about. So the fact that AI can do that for me, great, wonderful, love it. That's fantastic. And also like the humanness of therapy, right? If we're talking about in person, is like, even if AI were to start doing this stuff, it's like, let's say your client is crying and you hand them a tissue, the meaning of that moment versus how would AI recreate that moment in the same way, like that thoughtfulness that just comes with being a human and sitting in that space and actually being able to feel energy. I think we just shouldn't be so afraid. I think if anything, they'll be our assistants. Wonderful. I'll take it.
Very good. Very good.
Love it.
It's an interesting ride.
Yeah. And we're all going through it.
Yeah. And we all have really different perspectives. It's nice to hear it, and nice to feel. It's cool talking to you guys because you clearly are on that path and like I understand like the tech behind what happens in therapy and how to support it. So it's nice to be talking to people who like that, are open to that, and are curious about it as well, and not feeling so fearful of it replacing us. I think it's helpful, and I'm grateful for the people that are helping making it happen.
Very cool. Well, and as we're coming to the end, Parker, it'd be maybe we can bring Ida back in a year and like see what's happened, and that'd be fun for a sort of where are they now feature. But
I would love to. Hopefully, I'll have more to say.
No, this was great.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Tom, any other questions you'd like to throw out there before I wrap things up?
No, I think it's been a super fun conversation. I will give Ida another gold star because she is one of the few therapists that puts their rate right on their website instead of trying to like set up a call. And I'm a big, let's put your rates up there. Like just be real about it. And so gold star for you on that, Ida. But I've really loved talking to you, and I'm glad you're in the neighborhood so we can maybe share some patients in the future, and good to always have another resource.
Would love that. Thank you guys. I appreciate it. And yeah, let's put our rates on there. I mean, when I'm looking for a therapist, the last thing I want to do is call you to find out at the last 14 minutes to be like, and how much does this cost? And then be like, well, I can't even do it. Right? Like, let's be real, authentic, and straightforward. I think it's important.
And full disclosure, your website does meet my standards.
That's it.
Mental health.
I was going to message you after and be like, give me your real input.
No, it's perfect. It's got everything about you, and like Tom mentioned, it's got your rates. It's got a big call to action for here's how to schedule a consultation with me. You're using Calendly, which is very user friendly, and you got a blog, and it's just right there in the upper navigation menu. It's like about me, blog, schedule. Like that's perfect. All the elements.
I appreciate it. Thank you. And shout out to my brother because that is mostly him. So he's killing the game. Yeah.
All right. Well, I will go ahead and wrap things up here. Ida, it's been fun having you. And thank you for tuning into this week's episode of the Sit and Stay podcast brought to you by RipsyTech. Of course, if at any time you would like to send us any questions or want to get in contact with us, email us at sitandstay@ripsytech.com. And if you enjoyed the episode, we'd love a rating or review wherever you're listening. All right. It was great.
Well, and Parker, let's share Ida's website.
Oh yeah, please. Yeah. What's the name of your practice? What's your website?
Thank you. Name of
And
my
plug whatever you want to plug.
I love that. Okay. My practice name is Grow Through Changes. It's growthroughchanges.com. You can find it. Reach out to me if you'd like it. It's also growthroughchanges@gmail.com if you want to email me. So that's basically my biggest plug. And then I'm working side by side with my brother. He's building something called Therapy Stack, which is like intended to help therapists find tech tools that they can use when they start their own practice or just to help with their practice. So we're doing a little bit of that side by side. So both of those you can check out, therapystack.co and then growthroughchanges.com. Thank you guys.
Awesome.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the Sit and Stay podcast. Until we meet again, we invite you to sit and stay with the ideas and stories shared today. Dive deeper into how RipsyTech can support your practice by visiting us at RipsyTech.com.